Hi, everyone. This is Burgundy. Welcome to the Yoga Happiness Podcast. This is an episode of Yoga Talks. Today is actually Thursday, March 8th, and there is no recording from last night's session. We did not have it because people were otherwise occupied, which is fine. Life happens. And so in order to continue moving on with the book chapters, I am going to just sort of discuss this amongst myself. And feel free, if you have any comments or questions, leave them below. Either Facebook where I post it, or on Patreon, or someplace else where you might read this or see or listen to this, and I will respond as I can. So as a reminder, the Yoga Talks classes happen every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. after Kelly's intermediate class. Come in, wear whatever you want. We are primarily just discussing things. However, sometimes we do have little exercises that we might do depending on the topic. We are continuing on with Deborah Adele. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. The last name is spelled Adele. It looks like Adele to me. Deborah Adele, The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice. The Yamas and Niyamas are the first two of the 8 limbs of yoga, and they discuss and guide us on... Sorry, that was my alarm to medicate my cat. I've already done it. The Yamas and Niyamas discuss how to prepare your mind and your body. So these things talk about, focusing on clearing out the clutter of daily life, the things that we have going on in our minds and our thoughts and our hearts that really get in the way of being able to settle down and breathe and move and focus. So these are the things, these are the exercises that really start a full and complete yoga practice. As many of us know, coming in from a yoga to a yoga class, either first thing in the morning or in the evening after work, your mind might be spinning with all of the things that you need to do or the things that you did throughout the day. And so having a way to really even get to the meat of the problem before you actually step into the class. So for example, practicing the yamas and niyamas help to prepare you so that when things happen during the day, they don't accumulate in your mind, in your heart, in your body as stress. So this is why the practice of the yamas and niyamas, the understanding, the discussion, is so important. And I think also the yamas and niyamas are they're such human things. I think a lot of times we have this misconception that yoga is some pie in the sky. You can never be perfect at yoga, which is true. You can never be perfect at yoga. There is no such thing as perfection. That's why it's a practice. It's a lifestyle. But I think that sometimes we have this idea that, being a yogi, this guru on the mountain, sitting in lotus position for days and months, that's easy in my mind. I mean, depending on how your hips work, sitting cross-legged for 2 weeks or whatever might be challenging. But when you are removing yourself from the daily life of being a human, you're out of the stress and the rat race and all of that. You're not confronted with the things that go on in politics, in just human nature, in your body, aging, seasons, like all of these things. So being able to focus on the things that are seemingly simple, like what we've talked about, nonviolence. I mean, doesn't it make sense that you shouldn't be violent? We learn, depending on your spiritual belief, your religion or so forth, or just, my grandmother, don't hit people. Well, actually, she told me if somebody hits me, I can hit them back. But she didn't practice yoga. She was Sicilian. But I think that just these simple things of thinking deeper about nonviolence and truthfulness, and the things that we've discussed so far, these are really simple things, but your mind is such a devious little thing. Your mind plays tricks on you, and if you let your brain go off in all directions, then you do start to think that you're worthless and stupid and all of those negative things that get into your mind. So that sort of opens me up to this next one. The chapter on Brahmacharya is non-excess. Depending on where you are in the world listening to this, it'd be cool if there were people outside of Columbus, Ohio, but we'll see how pervasive this gets. But the idea of non-excess. So these were written quite a long time ago. Okay, the 8 limbs of yoga purported to be written by one person. Patanjali could potentially have been multiple people. However, this was still written centuries ago, and as of yet, there wasn't a concept of quote unquote Westerners and all of our excess and things and obesity and all of this, and yet there was still a need to discuss non-excess. However, let me point out, Brahmacharya, the word itself, and that's also what we read in this chapter, the definition of it means walking with God, Brahma. And the original intention, as we read it in the 8 limbs of yoga, the Yoga Sutras written by Patanjali, originally it was described as celibacy. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but specifically sexual celibacy. I suppose you could take the word celibacy and sort of apply it to a lot of things. But so being celibate, you see this with the monks and so forth. I'm thinking of Tibetan monks. But the idea is to remove the excess thoughts and desires, and excess passions that get in the way of simplicity. So, for example, if you're so consumed with having a sexual experience, I'm being polite because I don't know who's listening. Plug in all of the words that you probably, especially if you know me, plug in the words that you really would put in there. If you're so consumed with sex that you can't think of something else. And also keep in mind that originally yoga was practiced by men. And it wasn't until very recently that women were even allowed to practice yoga. It was seen as undignified, non-feminine, so on and so forth, which is extremely ironic considering what we've done with it here in America. But so if you consider the idea that yoga was primarily practiced by men, and the notion, and take all that cultural context and the notion that, your idea of sex and women and all of that is probably blocking your thoughts and mind and how you feel physically in your body to actually being open to other thoughts and feelings. So we'll put the notion of celibacy to the side. I think you can extrapolate some concepts of that and put that to the side. So applying this to now, to you, to me, to being a Westerner, and again, I'm making a big assumption that it's mostly Westerners listening to this. the idea of non-excess, I mean, I can think of so many things that I probably, even though I try to be really mindful, what are the things that you do to excess? Exercise. I'm guilty of that. Eat too much. Yep. Drink too much. What else? Well, for me, one of the things that I'm practicing, and not right now because of this podcast recording, I'm trying to practice not talking so much. I come from a long line of very vocal people. And so trying to limit my words to more important words. That is my personal practice of Brahmacharya right now. Just filling space isn't necessary. Filling, silence is important, and making the few words that you do use more important, I think, that's a challenge for me. So anyway, the idea of, what do you, not just indulge, but overindulge. The idea, and she even mentions this later in the chapter, the idea in non-excess, in Brahmacharya, isn't to remove pleasure. There's nothing wrong with pleasure and enjoying things. It's when you fill it all the way up to the top. You eat until you can feel it in your throat. Is that necessary? No. Think about why you drink. Let's take alcohol, for example. Why do you drink alcohol? There's some alcoholic beverages I really enjoy the flavor. I'll be honest about that. I do like the taste of Guinness. My boyfriend just recently made a batch of mead. I like the flavor of it. And yes, when I was in college, I drank to excess. So, my I don't know if it's a challenge necessarily, but something for me to think about is, why did I drink to excess? Because certainly the hangover wasn't worth it. And now, being over 40, a hangover is devastating. That's really not worth it anymore. I don't know that it was worth it then. But thinking about, when I was younger, I think I was trying to fit in. And then in all of us, if we're all trying to fit in by doing this thing that society somehow created, the idea of drunkenness as a way to fit in, especially in college, that's ridiculous. Maybe I felt like I needed to be social. Maybe, well, I do know, there were times when I was trying to avoid. I won't go into too much detail about what I was avoiding, but being drunk helped me avoid the person I was with, the situation, and so forth. All very bad things, bad reasons. A moderate amount of alcohol, depending on the study that you read, may be healthy. It also depends on the type of alcohol. But anyway, so think about the reasons why you choose to do something to excess. Working out, exercise. It's interesting how in the United States, we've got this huge, that the pun is not intended. We have an obesity problem. We have people who are extremely overweight. And then on the flip side, we have people who are exercising too much and injuring themselves. So we've got an obesity problem. We've got an over-exercise problem. And so there's the excess of food, lack of exercise. So excess doesn't need to mean that you have more of a thing. You can have more of a lack of thing, to put it that way. If somebody gets excessive about not eating food, you have anorexia. If somebody is excessive about, there were some diets where part of the idea is that you don't drink water, or you drink very little water. So that's excessive. So thinking about those types of excesses, fasting, too much, too often, eating too much, too often. So excess doesn't, can mean different things to different people. And also can push you to a point of addiction. So I like this story that Deborah Adele talks about on page 79 of her book, where she's talking about how she and a friend of hers would have, they had a daily, I don't know how often it was. They would meet for chai almost daily. And it was fun. And they enjoyed gathering together and talking and drinking the chai. And at first it was a treat. And then she realized that it almost became more of an addiction, where she felt like she needed the chai. She needed that. And the point is that there's nothing wrong with drinking chai, as she says, but then you realize that you're not having the chai is having you. And that's when you realize you have an addiction. And an addiction doesn't necessarily have to be to a drug. You may not ever be addicted to drugs, alcohol, caffeine, something like that. It can be an addiction to a process, a feeling. And the feeling may not necessarily be something, from an opioid. It could be a feeling from, the whole ritual of getting together and getting your chai and sitting down. And if you get to the point where you are unable to feel happiness or pleasure without getting that chai, then that's something to think about. There's a book that I'm reading with a friend of mine that she suggested, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And this idea of non-excess and Brahmacharya reminds me of the discussion in that book. And the idea that this is a broad overview of what the book is about, but talking about how a lot of times we think that lighting the incense, creating the environment, burning the candle, getting the prettiest yoga mat. I'm applying this to yoga. The best clothes, more expensive clothes, that is going to make you a better yogi. That means that you're practicing yoga or you're doing yoga by having all the things of yoga. But that's not the case. Being able to practice yoga, for example, and I'm taking the book out of context, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, applying it to yoga, being able to practice yoga anywhere, anytime, regardless of circumstance. And I don't just mean an asana practice, asana meaning the poses, being able to sit and be mindful and breathe and think about the words that you're saying and the things that you're looking at without judgment, being in the moment and present. You shouldn't have to light a stick of incense for that. You shouldn't have to wear certain clothes to achieve that. You shouldn't have to go to a yoga studio in order to practice yoga, because it's so much more than that. And so that's part of this idea of non-excess. The idea of just enough. I don't know. How often do we ever hear that in daily discussion here in the United States? If something is perfect, what does that mean to you? Like, I had just enough. For me, just enough is sort of an idea of perfection. Like, when you have just enough food, just enough dessert. Like, I'm not full. I'm not miserable. I don't need to unbutton my pants and walk funny. I don't have to sit back and try to breathe through my full belly. When you just feel like I had just enough so that I appreciated the food and the experience and the dessert, and I feel satiated. That idea of feeling satiated is such an amazing concept, because you can feel satiated. Again, taking words and not just applying them to the first thing you think of, like food, having just enough exercise where you feel good. And this is, so one thing that's true. So if for all of you runners out there, being able to go on your runs throughout the week, you're not trying to overdo it. As a matter of fact, the feeling you're trying to achieve is when you are done with your 2, 3, 4, 5+ mile run, your body, you're looking to feel good as if you could do it all over again. But you won't, because you're not trying to kill yourself on your runs. You're preparing your body maybe for a race or something more challenging eventually, but you don't need to destroy your body with your practice runs throughout the week. You really shouldn't destroy your body for the races either, unless you really think you're going to win. But I don't know Shalane Flanagan personally, and so most of the people that I talk to are not going to win a race. Although I do know a few people who've run races. It's pretty impressive. Anyhow, I'll be very honest. I think with the discussion about Brahmacharya and the translation of walking with God, I'd be interested to know your thoughts and ideas on this. So starting on page 82 of her book, where she's talking about walking with God, honoring and the idea of seeing yourself as sacred. I don't have a feeling about that necessarily. I am, as many people know, I believe in everything, but at the same time, so there's a difference between my belief in all things. You name it, I believe in it. However, there's a difference between belief and worship. And so I am hesitant to go too deeply into the notion of seeing God in everything. If you want to, that's fine. I like to open yoga up and remove any religious connotation. And I like to open it up and use verbiage that allows for anybody's belief system. So I think that's where I'm coming from when I have a little bit of an issue with being so heavy on the big G God discussion when it comes to anything in yoga, but also specifically with this. Depending on your belief system, you may believe in the Christian God, the Muslim God, and they're all Abrahamic faiths, right? So Judaism, Muslim, Islam, and Christianity technically all come from the same God, but I'm not going to have that discussion. That's for a different time. So, I just wanted to be open about my feeling about putting big G God into this discussion here. I know that that's part of the original intent. But if the whole rest of these yamas and niyamas we're putting into a more contemporary, different context, I like to see it without a big G. Maybe a little G, that's okay. Because I don't know which God she's talking about. I think that seeing, as she says on page 83, seeing with the eyes of holiness shifts how we act as well as how we see. When gratitude and wonder sit in the heart, there is no need for excess. Absolutely, I agree with that. I do think that you could probably take out some of the verbiage in there and make it a little bit more secular. But I don't want to remove the spiritual aspect. And spiritual with a little s, wherever your belief system is coming from, that's where I would like people to come from in this discussion, is what is it that you find is most sacred with yourself? Is it you? Is it, do you have a spiritual belief? Do you believe in a higher being? But seeing yourself as precious, I think is valuable. There's a quote that says, love teaches me that I'm everything, but wisdom teaches me I'm nothing. And so in between is where I live. My life flows in between the idea of being everything and being nothing all at the same time. You are important. You are unique. But at the same time, if you pull out and look at the whole universe, you may be unique, but you're not the only one. And I think that that's an important thing to think about. And that also helps with the concept of Brahmacharya, in that you're special, you are unique. However, you also share the planet and the universe with all other things. And taking more than you need takes it from somebody else, doesn't it? So, and this doesn't necessarily mean if I eat more food, that takes food from somebody else. Yeah, that may be true. But also, if you're taking more than you need, let's talk about food, for example. If you're eating or taking in more food than you need, then that also means that you are contributing to the destruction of our planet. I'll be very blunt about it. The destruction of our planet with this need, this insatiable need to continue to produce more and more food for all of the people that think that they need to eat more food. Taking more time than is polite. Taking your sweet old time to get through the door when you know that there are people behind you trying to get through the door. There's all sorts of water. I mean, that's a big thing. That always has been a big thing. Not all water is drinkable. And so letting your tap just run while you're brushing your teeth or while you're washing your hands or something like that, it is taking water away from somebody else. Think about, South Africa. April something or other is coming up. These folks are running out of water. And here we are, certain parts of the United States, just sitting there letting the water run for no good reason. We're not doing anything with it. So those types of things, thinking about your place in this entire planet and how the things that you do impact other people, other plants, well, not other plants, you're not a plant, but other beings. It's not just you and other humans, it's you and your interaction with the planet. On page 83, I highlighted this, put arrows pointing to it. She says, my ego doesn't like the idea that life can go on without me. This really spoke to me. Having been in the corporate world and in a position where I knew a lot about a certain topic in my company. The problem with that, if you are in a competitive environment where you feel the need to be the only person that knows something, you think that that's job security. And it's not. That is a foolish thought and is destructive. So if you are the only one with that knowledge, that means that, number one, you're working inside of a vacuum and your knowledge will never grow. You may not become better. You may stagnate. Being able to discuss something with another person who also understands that subject matter just makes you smarter, makes you better, fills you up more. But the other problem that you run into if you hold information and you don't share it with others, especially when it comes to a skill, good luck taking a vacation. And that's what I ran into. I knew how to do something and nobody else in the company did. And so I was working crazy hours until finally, just for self-preservation, I don't care about job security, because the truth is that if I left the company, which I did, somebody else can fill my spot. I am replaceable, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when the moment that I was able to share this information and this skill with at least one other person, that meant that I could take a break, that I could have weekends off, that I could take time off and enjoy it without thinking about all of the people that are just chomping at the bit waiting for me to get back. When I take a vacation, at first, it's hard to think about that. Life is still going on without you. If if you're not the only person in your company that knows how to do this thing, they can still function without you. It may be a little bit challenging, and they probably had to shift the workload a little bit so that you could take a day off or a week off. But being the only person that can do something, if the world wasn't able to continue on without you, that means you can never have a truly restful break, because you're sitting there thinking about all of the people, all of the things that can't happen because you're taking a break. That's not a break. You may not be doing the work anymore for that week, but you're still stuck in the stress of it. So think about your feelings on being okay with the world spinning without you. Do you need people to need you? And there's a difference. Want and need are two different things. And also think about that when, just in your everyday language, about when you're, let's say, I need a drink. I'm going to go back to this alcohol thing. I need a drink. Do you need it or do you want it? There's a difference. Change your vocabulary, because your vocabulary helps drive your intention. Think about what you're saying. I feel a little rumbling in my belly. Oh, I'm starving. Are you? Are you just hungry? Also, along that same line, what you're feeling may be thirst, as a matter of fact, and she does bring this up in the book. A lot of times we feel something in our belly and we assume that it's hunger, and so we eat something, when in fact, if we just had a glass of water, that might have actually done the trick. Your brain plays tricks on you, right? One of the last concepts that she brings up, the quote from Howard Thurman, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs, ask yourself what makes you come alive." I think that can apply to a lot of things. That's big. I could probably talk for hours and hours about just that statement. Not thinking about what the world needs, but thinking about what makes you come alive. Going back to the concept of your job, your career. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then you're not going to do it well. Or you're not going to do it as well as you would if you enjoyed it. So there are two ways of coming to that. Maybe start to see the good in what you do. Start to find something that you enjoy and focus on that. It may not be the best job ever. You may not be living your dream right now. This may be an interim job, something to help you get by, or a stepping stone for the next thing. You don't have to be miserable in that if you change your outlook, your perspective, your intention, then maybe you can find something that you enjoy and then do that well. But if you find, like I did, that even with all, I'm trying, I find, okay, I've got a couple positive things I can say about my job, the job that I left several years ago. I enjoyed some of the people that I worked with. Some of them I called my friends. And I enjoyed the clients and the work itself. But there were aspects that I just couldn't, they were too important for me to ignore. And it was in conflict with some core beliefs of mine. And so I left. And that made all the difference. I sat down. I literally did this. So when people suggest, writing down a list of things that you really love, what are your passions? So I decided, okay, what would make me happy? What makes me come alive? I enjoy teaching. I enjoy helping people. And I enjoy yoga. And I'm using the word enjoy, but truly what I mean is, like, I love these things. I love teaching and working with people to help them do something they don't think they can do, or help them understand something that will actually make them feel better inside and out. I love that. I may not be the best at it, and I don't care. I work hard at that. I work to be a better teacher. And part of being a better teacher is being a better student. But I also, in addition to that, I don't want to say but, and I love yoga, all aspects of yoga. There are parts of the yoga community or culture here in the United States that I'm not too thrilled about. And so putting all of those things together, I decided I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And then I decided, okay, how am I going to be a yoga teacher and not do the things that I think are destructive in some aspects of the yoga community? I'm going to teach it in a different way. I'm going to teach the way that I enjoy, that I prefer, that I think might help people. And I have become a better person for it. I'm happy. I can feel the change in my body. And so I am finding the things that make me come alive. I love doing these podcasts. I love interviewing people. So truthfully, I enjoy the technology of it. I'm using this really cool microphone that sounds great. I found this software that I understand how to use, and the challenge of figuring out, how do you create a podcast? I didn't know. So I got to research it because I love to learn. So, the things that I found the core thing that I really loved, yoga and teaching. And then I found all of these other things that I could plug in to make it interesting and different and so forth. And that has helped me come alive. And so, looking at the book, to Howard Thurman's point, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And here's the thing. By finding what makes me come alive, teaching yoga, technology, learning, all of that, then in essence, I am filling potentially a spot, a void of what the world needs. I do believe that the world needs more yoga, but what do I mean by that? The world needs more education, more open-mindedness, more mindfulness, more compassion. So all the things that are fundamental to yoga, I do think the world needs. However, I can't just go out there and force feed compassion and mindfulness. I have to actually come from a place of passion and love from within myself in order for it to be genuine. I mean, don't we all know, like, you've seen the people that are selling something, right? They're selling it because they're getting money for it. Because they don't really care. They just need a paycheck. You can tell the difference between somebody who is presenting something to you for a paycheck versus presenting something to you because they love it. There's a difference. You can tell the difference as the recipient or as the audience member or whatever. You can tell the difference. So moving on to the questions for exploration. It's an oddly challenging word to say. Deborah gives us four, for every week we get, or for every chapter we get the four questions for exploration. In week one, so just as sort of a reminder to catch people up on things, each chapter in her book is sort of intended, she intends it to be a month-long practice. So week one of your month on Brahmacharya, this week, examine your beliefs, values, habits, and actions around sexuality and sexual activity. Notice what your culture, the media, your faith community, and your family have to say about this topic. Then notice if you act on outside authority or your own beliefs. I think that's important, especially right now when we're talking about the Me Too movement, the Time's Up, all of that. And this is not pointing the finger at men or women. This is pointing the finger at everybody. Society has created this, not just Harvey Weinstein. My God, the world, society created somebody like Harvey Weinstein. He just didn't come out of nowhere, right? So this culture that allows things to happen, that encourages things, that stays silent when it shouldn't, think about these things. And think about how that makes you or causes you to look at yourself in a certain way. Be brave enough to think about how a word or a movie or a concept, how that affects you, how you feel about it. When somebody tells me tells me that I'm good looking, yeah, but you know what? I'm also smart. I'm also intelligent. I'm also strong. It's nice to be attractive, but I want to be attractive from the inside out. When somebody's first comment is about appearance, that's your first look at somebody, of course, is appearance. But that's not all there is to somebody, right? So think about the words that are said, the words that you say. Are you saying old stuff that's no longer, that you maybe no longer believe, because society just lets it, you just say it, Week 2, live this week in non-excess. Eat, work, and sleep to the point of increased energy and before the lethargy of excess sets in. Yeah. Try not to sleep too much. Sleep just the right amount. That's, kind of hard maybe, but don't overwork. Don't overeat. So I get headaches when I don't eat every 4 hours. However, I also get a headache and I feel miserable if I eat way too much. So eating that right amount, your body, think about when you have, like a garden hose. I don't know. I don't have a good example right now, but think of like a garden hose, and if you have too much water going through it, there's a whole lot of pressure going through. If you have just enough, then you can control the garden hose. You can spray it where you want or whatever. Excess causes a backup because there's only so much energy that your body can handle. There's only so much food and drink that your body can pull through itself, right? So allow your body time to digest. Maybe not eat so fast, and see how quickly you actually do become just perfectly full. Ponder the words of Jinsei, a Japanese Buddhist monk who said, the point of life is to know what's enough. So try to find just enough and practice pleasure without excess. For week 3, this week, notice where you see God and where you don't. Notice the beliefs or judgments that limit your ability to see God and experience God in all things. Then practice letting everything be a relationship with the divine. See the sacred in the ordinary and God in each person you encounter. Ponder the words of Yogi Bhajan, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. So see God in all. And I think, again, this is me putting my belief system onto this. Do this in your own way. It doesn't have to be God with a big G. It doesn't have to be divine with a big D. What is God to you? Do you believe in a God? But see what's precious. See what's unique. See what's wonderful and beautiful in all things. Okay? If you don't believe in God with a big G. Week 4. This week, contemplate your own divinity. Are you willing to be sacred? Write down 3 practices that connect you to your passion and your sacredness. I think there is a whole lot of importance in seeing yourself as sacred and important and beautiful and unique. Ride that balance between the world can spin without me, but I am still important, right? Don't let your ego get carried away. Excuse me. I do not cause the world to spin. However, there are people in my life who would be sad if I was not here. I play an important part, an important role in life, the things around me. So be mindful of that. And what are your passions? How can you live your life to fulfill your passions and connect with those things? So, Brahmacharya. I did miss having a good conversation with other people, so I had to talk to myself and you. This chapter, I think, is, I think on some level, just like with all of these concepts, with the yamas and the niyamas, I think that on the superficial level, the top layer here, it's obvious, not living to excess. I think that makes sense. However, I think thinking about things that you take to excess in other ways than what might be obvious, I think is important. Thinking about, do you leave any time for yourself in your calendar? Do you feel that you have to pack your day with something? Spending quiet time. Do you always have to have music or noise? Can you appreciate silence? Can you appreciate not doing? I think that we live in a society, and we've talked about this before, we live in a society where you're made to feel bad if you're not being productive. But I think we need to redefine what that means. Being productive doesn't mean that you are always doing something to make money or to make something. Being productive, if you want to continue to use the word being productive, part of being productive is also allowing yourself to rest, giving yourself time off, giving your brain time to reboot. Sleeping isn't the only time that you should allow your brain to reboot. Your brain is still extremely active when you're sleeping. It's processing, So you're not turned off when you're sleeping. So building in time to turn off throughout the day is extremely important. And the psychology around allowing yourself to turn off is important. If you are unable to find half an hour at the very least to just sit there, what does that mean to you? To just sit for half an hour? Or to just take a walk for half an hour? Leave your phone at home. Do you need it? So think about how you can build in me time throughout the day. You don't have to, even reading a book is doing something. Truly, just allow your eyes to wander past 2 feet in front of you. We sit all day with these damn computers and cell phones in front of us. And even, I read a lot. I'm reading magazines and books and all sorts of things. And so, my eyes are just trained to be a couple of feet in front of me. Allow yourself to look far, to look at the trees down the road, and while you're taking a walk, if somebody passes you, look them in the eye, acknowledge them, say hi. You don't have to get into a conversation, but get out of yourself and connect with people and nature and the environment. And that's how you can start to work on living without excess, living simply and connecting with other humans, even in the simplest ways. As a runner in the running community, we have this sort of unwritten, unspoken, practice of when you're running, if you pass another runner, you just sort of like lift your hand, say hi or whatever. You're not having a conversation. We're not stopping running. You're just acknowledging another human being that's doing the same thing. And you don't have to raise your hand and say hi only if they're running. Is it really that uncomfortable for you to have a possibly a 3-second interaction with somebody as they pass by you? A lot of times we avert our eyes, we look down, you look away. Why? Look at somebody, smile. It makes you feel really good, and it makes that other person feel really good. So practice non-excess. See what it means to you. Think about the things that you might do to excess. Think about why you do them to excess. Think about why you eat too much or exercise too much or talk too much. Me blaming it on being raised with a bunch of talkers, that is a bad excuse. I like to hear myself talk. I think I have important things to say. But there's importance in the silence in between as well. And making it's quality over quantity. And also remember the saying, everything in moderation, including moderation. Have fun. Have a Sunday when you want to, but not often, right? It needs to be special. I could have a whole other discussion about my frustration with so many things being birthday cake flavored. Like there's birthday cake flavored chewing gum and ice cream. It makes me crazy. Birthday cake is for birthdays, not for just like middle of the day chewing gum. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, I do encourage you to help support this on patreon.com/yoga happiness. If you have any comments or questions, again, leave them below. Email me. I'm highly accessible. Check out my email or check out my website, yogahappiness.us. You can find the contact me page. Shoot me an email. If you have any suggestions for other yoga talks, or if you would like to be interviewed by me for the podcast, if you do something that somehow incorporates yoga of some sort, let's talk about it. I would love to hear your side of things. So then next week, next Yoga Talks discussion, we are going into, I should have been ready, parigraha, which is non-possessiveness. So you can see continue to see how all of these things are somehow related. Non-excess, non-possessiveness. All of this stuff is non-violence. So anyway, next week, we'll talk about non-possessiveness. Have a wonderful week. Thanks, everyone.